Make it sound easy to them. Simplify it. Do not overcomplicate it. Confused mind can't buy, won't buy. If it sounds too complicated, they check out and they won't do it. So, but you got to ask questions, keep them engaged.
One of the things that's unrelated to this, but I actually want to say this on this, and I'm posting a video on it in a few minutes. Lately, I've been getting a lot of people say, well, hey, doc, what? Because I get a lot of clinical education questions, a lot of clinical input things. So many of you guys are like, hey, doc, I ran this through chat and here's what it said. Let me tell you the statistics on ChatGPT being a doctor. You can't trust that thing, man. It only tells you what you want to hear. It's like a kiss ass. It just goes through everything you've ever asked, and then it customizes the answer to what you want to hear. Here's the statistics. They took 20 natural doctors because they wanted to make this applicable to us. So this isn't the medical world. They took 20 doctors who had complete workups on their patients. They looked at all the records, the whole history of these patients and the diagnosis, ran them through chat. Here's what's scary. 56.8% of the time somebody had a life-threatening situation who needed to immediately seek medical intervention, chat said they were fine. 56.8%, over half the time people would have died if chat was their doctor, literally. Here's the other scary side of that. 65.8% of the time when it said this is a medical emergency, seek help immediately, the patient was fine. It's not even 50% accurate. So while it's a good tool to maybe look at, you still have to think, man, do not use ChatGPT to make medical diagnosis. It's not a doctor, and it's not accurate. If it were accurate, I'd say go crazy. But 56% of the time it missed life-threatening things, and 65% of the time when it said it was life-threatening, the patient was fine. So those are your chat AI, not just chat, those are your AI statistics in using AI as a doctor. So while I love it for a lot of stuff, it doesn't replace our brains as medical professionals. All right, let's jump into this with my little rant being done. One of the things I want to talk about really is this: the day one, day two is your sales process of your office, and it's the engine that produces revenue. And so while a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, not more day one, day two stuff, without this, you are not going to scale your practice. Every system you put in place is to support the sales process. So if you have the best systems and no patients, you just have a lot of systems that you and your staff talk about by yourself. So you still have to have clients, right? So this is really the sales aspect of what we do. And part of the idea with day one, day two is the goals of this is the patient needs to know we understand them, right? That we understand what's happening. You need to develop trust. They also need to see that there's value in what you're doing. You can't ask for $10,000 if you build $1,000 worth of value on day one, day two, and then to get them to commit to the program. So all of these things are part of the day one, day two process. When you miss those 4 points, man, people just don't, that's when you get the objections and people question things and they got to think about it. So a lot of this is really just, it's what drives the whole office. Now, here's the thing. Being good at sales is a habit. While there are natural salespeople, there aren't very many of them. Even Jeremy Miner talks about that he actually had to develop techniques and train himself to be who he is. He didn't wake up one day and close every sale. He struggled in the beginning. So all these habits work, all of these sales techniques for day one, day two, these are habits. I know Bill and I have talked about this. Like when Bill first started, Bill did not go through day one and day two once and then open his office and start doing it. How many hours would you say you put into listening to day one, day two stuff?
Dude, several hundred. I mean, I remember I'd cast them to my TV because I felt like I would watch it more if I put it on my bigger TV, right? I remember training with Kaz before I was a coach. Kaz Goodman, we just made every waking moment in the beginning was listening to videos of people who had been there, done that. And I remember Kaz would text me and say, hey, I just listened to this video while I was in the shower, right? And we were trying to one up each other on who could listen to the videos and watch the videos more. And I remember watching a video of Dr. Purcell that I swear it was the 10th time, and it was on my big TV, and I paused. I was like, wait a second, what did he just say? And I backed it up, and I was like, no, that hasn't been in there before. That's different. right? So you're at a different state of awareness every time you watch it, what you're ready for. So you got to make it a habit. And I want to real quick, I just came from the group day 1 training, and we're having so many wins over there. I want to shout out Rob Rice's Dr. Sanela Begovic. She told us, the group today, that she did a 7-minute ROF. It was the easiest ROF she's ever done. 7 minutes. The patient was jumping to give her the credit card for $10,000.
That is awesome.
And she has shown up 4 weeks in a row at least, and she's putting in the work and the training. Her day 2's gone from a B to an A. Her day 1's gone from a C- to a B+, and she's still got a little ways to go, but it is that day 1, to your point, Dr. Kingsbury. When we talk about the day 2 being a formality, if it's not feeling like that, it's because you're not going deep enough on day 1. When we say it's a formality, it's only if you're going deep enough. And so those are the strategies and the things we talk about on those calls.
Yeah, that is awesome. And again, repetition, you guys. In fact, I can say this confidently, and I haven't asked Bill this question, but I can say with 100% confidence, Bill and I still train on day 1, day 2, so that we can be better coaches, and we don't even have practices. And we're still training on this stuff, and we killed it in practice, but we still train on it, because if we learn one little thing that makes you a better closer, that's what we do. So we're still not done training on this stuff, are we, Bill?
No way.
Yeah, so, I mean, I remember Corey saying how when he first started, he literally for months listened to this in his car. He role played with his wife, and he just owned this stuff, and he scaled very quickly, not because he's smarter than anybody, but because, man, that guy trained nonstop for months, and he just scaled quickly because he consumed this stuff. In fact, I heard Zig Ziglar say this years ago, and I still stick with it. Zig Ziglar basically said, whenever you have a book or tape series, cassette series back, tells you how old I am, or it might have even been 8-track, I don't know. He basically said, whenever you're exposed to something new, you don't own it till the 6th time. And so whenever I get a book that I want to read, if I read a book and I like it, I read it 5 more times, because I know there's going to be something that 5th time, 6th time through. So training never stops, you guys. And that's where your confidence comes from. A lot of doctors want to wait till you close 100 people to be confident. That confidence doesn't come just from closing. It comes from knowledge. Knowledge breeds confidence. There's this curve that I used to use when I did sales training, that literally your confidence as a salesman is directly proportional to your knowledge of your product and your process. And so if you want to be more confident with day 1, day 2, be more knowledgeable. It's not about, the wins are awesome, but your confidence actually comes from knowledge. I know salespeople I used to train that were natural salespeople. They were killing it, and they were the most insecure people in the group because they knew it was a house of cards, because they didn't have the knowledge backing them. And so it was just personality driven, and it's not sustainable, and it definitely doesn't give you confidence. So that's kind of our little build up into going into this. That being said, I want you guys to set a training schedule, a day 1, day 2 training schedule. You should be training as a staff every week on this. I know a lot of people train once, and they're like, yep, we did the day 1, day 2 training. Let's jump in the day 1, day 2 room. This should be weekly. In your training, at least some time should be dedicated. Wade, what was your training schedule around this stuff when you were you are in practice. What is your training schedule around this stuff?
So, I mean, right now, my guy working with this stuff for a long time, and I actually had some of my guys working with Bill. But as far as me working, I'm still doing this stuff myself. So, I mean, I still bounce ideas back and forth with everybody. We have team powwows with my personal team. I still talk to Bill. I still talk with you guys on a weekly basis. It isn't something that ever really stops.
Yep. And let me say, we have so much training for you guys. It's not just the day 1, day 2 section. We have patient experience videos. We have sales framework. We have AI tools. We have the support groups. We have the coaching calls. And one of Dr. Gum's quotes that I love around our resources that he said once is, most of our practices don't fail because they don't have the tools. It's because the tools sit unused. There is unlimited training for you guys, and we're here for you. So that's kind of the framework of today, which is practice, practice, practice. This stuff, you're not going to own this stuff until you say it so many times you can do it in your sleep.
You've got to do it. What is it? You've got to do it till you get it right, and then keep doing it till you can't get it wrong. You need to watch game film, right? Your game film is your recordings. We just had a doc who just graduated from onboarding that added and enrolled his first metabolic care plan to an existing patient, but he was reviewing game film, right? He was listening to recordings and he was submitting recordings and breaking that down. We had a clinic go from a new scratch startup, 0 to 85,000 a month in 5 months, because he recorded everything, every day 1, 2, and then he put it in the AI analyzer and started working on the sections and that he was low on. And then once a week, he'd get on a coaching call with a coach to get through the sticking points that he couldn't get through on his own. Then the next week, he'd record everything and put them all through the AI analyzer. Every day he's doing this so that the next day he could try to be better than the day before, and Wednesday better than Tuesday, and Thursday better than Wednesday. And then on Fridays, I would coach him through sticking points, right? That's how you need to train. Like using those tools that you have on a consistent basis to keep getting better and better and better.
Yeah, and I'll tell you one thing with recordings, record yourself on a hot streak. You're your best coach. One of the things that helped me is Kelly would record herself all the time, and she would go where she would close like 14 in a row, right? Like she had one week where she had an $80,000 week. She recorded that week, and then when she hit a slump later on, she didn't need me to coach her. She just went back and listened to what she did on a hot streak and was like, oh, I forgot this, this, and this. So when you're on a hot streak, that's the time to record also. Don't wait till things go to fall apart before you start recording. You use yourself as a resource. When you're on a hot streak, nobody's a better coach than that. So
if we're going to compare this to like golfing, so the top golfer in the PGA is only 5% better than the guy in 200th place. But if you look at how much money, the top golfer makes 691 times more than the 200th place doctor. 691 times more money. Rory McIlroy, one of his prizes, he made $13,257,558. The guy who was in 200th place made $19,180. Over a 5% spread.
That's awesome. I'm gonna write those stats down, Wade. That was cool. So and that's the thing is you don't need to double how good you are. You just need to get a little better. Like that's a great statistic. So we're gonna start out with the why, because we did get a few questions on that. I won't read the word for word question, but basically it's, hey, I had a patient come in, they realized how they were in trouble, they wanted to be healthier, and then they just didn't sign up and I couldn't get a why. So one of the things I want to address here is, I'll have Bill and Wade jump in on this so you don't all just not like me. You can not like them too. Some of your recordings are painful. And here's why. You are making it awkward because you're trying to get an emotional connection that you haven't earned. My analogy is, here's the deal. And I've said this a million times. People will pay a few $100 to get out of pain. They'll pay a couple thousand for what they can't do, and they'll pay 10,000 for what that means to them. But there's still work to be done to get there. So for example, in fact, this was right off a recording. And I was talking to the doctor and they said, I don't understand why she didn't sign up. I had such a great why. And I listened to the recording and I'm like, I don't see it. So I said, well, what do you think the why was? She wanted to play with her grandkids. I started laughing when I heard this because of Wade on our last coaching call. What's your response, Wade, when someone says their why is they don't want to, like, well, I got the patient's why they don't want their foot amputated?
Why not?
Yeah, neither do I, right?
Neither do I. Yeah, like if I don't want to have surgery, well, I don't either. I don't want an amputation. I don't either. You know,
nobody wants that stuff. That's not a why.
I didn't wake up today. I'm like, man, I just cut my stupid foot off.
Yeah, you know. So the point is, that's not a why. So here was my question. I said, okay, And here's the point to this. You have to get more clarification. If you try to do the Dr. Phil FBI approach, it's going to feel salesy and awkward. If you put the time in and connect to someone as a human being, it's organically easy. So in this case, when the lady says, I just, I want to play with my grandkids. That's not a why. The doctor went right into, and how would that feel to play with your grandkids? And the woman was like, it'd feel good. They're my grandkids. She was almost offended by this. And the doctor's like, I just felt salesy. Like, that's because you were salesy. You hadn't earned the right to ask that question yet. This is like being on a first date and before the meal even arrives, leaning in and trying to get the goodnight kiss. Like, you're going to get there eventually if you connect and ask questions and get to know this person, but you just haven't put in the time yet. So my question to this doctor was, how old are her grandkids? If I've got a 15-month-old grandkid and I don't have good balance and I'm afraid to walk and console this kid while it's crying, that's a different why than I have a 15-year-old grandchild whose game I can't go to because I can't walk from the parking lot to the field. So you have to ask questions around their why. The why isn't the first thing they say. And if you're having trouble pulling the why, it's because you're not having a conversation. So how old are when's the last time you saw them? Anybody know who, I think it's Kira Sedgwick, actress. She was in a lot of movies. I might have said her name wrong. Anyway, real famous in the day. Her dad was a patient of mine. He's 94, and it started out with, I just want to see my grandkids again. Like Wade says, yeah, so do I. That's not a why. And if I would have stopped there and said, well, how would that feel to go see your grandkids? It'd be great. I want to see my grandkids. Like, who doesn't? Well, here's the deal. That wasn't his why. I said, well, where are your grandkids? How old are they? Oh, I got great grandkids all the way from 6 months to 30 years old. I'm like, okay, well, that's a lot of grandkids. So what's the one thing that you want to do to see them? Like, I don't understand I'm like, what is it that you're missing? And he goes, well, they live everywhere from New York. They're all on the East Coast from New York to Florida. I said, well, you're 94. I said, so I'm curious what your plan is at your age to see all these grandkids one more time. He goes, that's the point. He goes, my wife and kids won't let me drive because my feet, I can't feel the gas pedal. I want to drive to New York, follow the coast of Florida, and take 3 months and visit every grandchild and great-grandchild before I die. So what was his why? Was it visiting his grandkids? No, his why was driving, right? So when I said, what would it be like if we could get your feet to the point where you're safe driving and you could see those grandkids? He's like, oh man, I'd give anything if I could drive safely. While he wants to see his grandkids, driving safely was his why. And he actually did that. And I got postcards from all over the Eastern US with this guy with his grandkids, and he was 94. And so the point is, if I tried to make the emotional moment on, I want to see my grandkids, and didn't get to, I can't drive safely, that guy would not have given me $10,000. So Bill and Wade, I would love your input on that, because I'm sure you hear these same things in recordings. And you're like, keep going. You're not there yet. This isn't the moment.
Well, it is the separation of it's going from a general desire to an actual why. I don't want to have surgery, and we can always take this away from neuropathy specifically. Sometimes we kind of narrow this in a little bit too much. But with I get all this stuff back from decompression day ones all the time, and they're like, everybody's why is always, I don't want to have surgery. Oh, no kidding. Like, nobody wants to have surgery. No, especially spine surgery. So, well, I mean, why do you say that? Well, and then they might say something like, my dad had 3 of them and he's still completely miserable. I mean, so you saw this firsthand, what happened to him after, number 1, number 2, number 3, and what was left. Like, what did that take away from him? What was he unable to do? Oh, this, that, and this and that. Are those things also important to you? Yeah, I mean, huge. So, I mean, if we were able to, stop this from getting worse and maybe even get a little bit better to where that risk of having to have surgery and the potential of, going through what your dad went through and not being able to do this and this and this and this. If you're able to enjoy that throughout your, maybe they're retired, maybe they're not, whatever. If you're able to enjoy those things, what would that mean to you? Can I start now? Like, well, we can talk. But you're usually 1 to 2 questions away from finishing it. But it is having the situational awareness of knowing what that next question is going to be. And that comes with practice. And there's 2 ways to practice. You can practice in front of somebody where there's a paycheck involved, or you can practice when there's not. And I know an awful lot of people that only practice when there's a paycheck involved. And then, it stings a lot worse getting a no when when there's a $10,000 bill attached to it, compared to hearing Bill say, "Wade, you suck." Okay, well, fix it, Bill. It's a lot easier on my feelings than watching a paycheck walk out the door.
Yeah, and I will say, I'd love your opinion on this, Bill. Would you say that, in fact, I kind of got this from you. That's why I'm asking you this, because you said this in so many words one time. Man, way back when I first started, I wasn't even coaching or even a mentor yet. And I was talking about, God, I said, I'm good at it, but man, I hate day one. And you said something around the lines of, well, if you're trying to force a connection, it's painful. If you just connect with them as a person and keep asking questions, it's fun. And so if you hate it, it's because you're trying to force a connection instead of just getting to know them. I'm destroying it in translation, but can you talk about that a little bit?
Not so much, but no, you're not destroying it. That's accurate. Like put away the computer, put away the mouse, the keyboard, the clipboard. Just sit with them as a person. Everybody that's coming into you, they are a person with a life and a family and friends, or whatever that looks like for them. Everybody has a reason for doing something, right? They don't just go to the doctor's office just to spend an hour or 2 because they want to, right? There's a reason attached to that. So what is that? You've just got to find out what their reason is. But you've got to own the questions. If you were trained in OPQRST and all the symptomatology and timing and duration and frequency and all that stuff, you're a commodity at that point. So now they're just going to base you on price, and the joint is probably your closest competitor, right? But when you have a conversation and you connect with them energetically and there's no barriers between them, you're just finding out what their life is like and what their reasons are. So people have an identity. They all want freedom and independence. So those are the 3 things that that their why revolves around. Who they are, their identity, fear of losing it, wanting to regain, retain, gain it back, and their like who they are as a person, and then their fear of loss, their freedom and independence. But you could have 10 people in a room, they all want freedom and independence, I promise you. That, but a general, like Wade was saying, so you're here because you want to get your independence back, is that right? And they say yes, and you think you got it, and then wonder why they didn't sign up. What was the freedom and independence for them? What was the specific reason? Oh, really? If they say, well, yeah, I'm not feeling, I'm losing my independence. Oh, really? I'm curious about that. Tell me more, like in what way, right? Ask strategic questions, but you got to know what the questions are. Who, what, where, when, why, how, is, if, 0 to 10. That's it. If you can get away from let the paperwork, collect the data, ask a few, you've got to find out, you've got to illustrate to them, you've got to ask a couple questions about symptoms, because you got to regress them and show them that it's progressed. You got to future pace them to the negative, you got to future pace them to the positive. They have a fear of loss, you got to find out what that is, and they have a desire to regain or retain or maintain, right? It's your job. So you got to own the questions, because what happens is, if you don't own this bank of who, what, where, when, why, is, if, 0 to 10 questions, when you get stuck, you're going to revert back to OPQRST, and then you're a commodity at that point. That's why Sanella closed a $10,000 case in 7 minutes, because she spent more time in the consult. I'd rather go deeper and have it take 5 to 10 extra minutes, because you'll gain it back on the back end. right?
Absolutely. So, yeah. So, and I will say too, when it comes to asking more questions, while most of the time we're trying to really kind of chip away at what the real deal is, we're also trying to rule out things that aren't true. Sometimes people just say stuff. I had a patient once that was like, man, I'm like, well, what would you like to get back to? It was a decompression. He's like, man, my back just hurts all the time. I said, well, tell me one of the things that it really interferes with. He goes, oh man, it really interferes with my golf game. I'd love to go golfing again. Now, had I said, wow, man, how would that feel to get back out there golfing, or tried future, pacing him without asking questions, that would have backfired, because what I asked him, I said, well, when's the last time you went golfing? 2 years ago. I said, and how often do you golf? Well, once or twice a year. This is not a golfer. This is someone that just threw something out to get me off his back. And so sometimes you want to, so then I was like, okay, well, what else does this interfere with? But it would have been easy for me to hang my hat on golfing, and he never would have signed up. This is not a golfer. It just occurred to him.
I just used that on our day one.
Oh, is that right?
On our day one group. Hey, going back to identity real quick. Identity is our habits, our beliefs, our behaviors, our activities, the things we do repetitively on a frequent basis. A health nut, they may tell you they're a health nut. Okay, why are they a health nut? That's what we got to figure out. Not the desire to stay being a health nut, right? But why are they a health nut, as an example? And then the golf thing, Rory McIlroy is a golfer. That's one of his identities. He gets paid to do it, so he has to practice at it every single day. A 6-time-a-year golfer, they may tell you golf, but if you don't figure out how often they play, you've got to discern, is that really an identity or not? And everybody has these protective layers up that time with you will help lower those protective layers. But so the more you can connect with them and ask those questions, and using tonality, right? If you're monotone all the time, it's going to come across weird. Like, this guy, why is he asking me these questions? But if you're genuinely curious, if you just say you're curious, and your body will follow. Oh, really? Wait, so I can understand that it makes sense to me from my side that you're trying to avoid amputation, but I'm curious, help me understand that. Why are you trying to avoid that, right? If you do it that way, it doesn't sound weird. You're curious. If you're concerned, just say, okay, wait, this is concerning to me. If you are confused, so, okay, wait, I'm confused. Clarify that for me. Help me understand. Your facial expression and your tone will change to match it, so it doesn't sound weird.
One of the things I think when it comes to the day one, your job isn't to have the answers, it's to get the answers on day one. Day two, you should have an answer. Day one, you're trying to get the answers from them. And so I know we're spending a lot of this call on the why, but I think we've made it too hard. On the recordings, it feels awkward when we listen, because you're just not having the conversation like Bill just said. You're not just, well, I'm curious about this. Well, tell me more about it. I think sometimes we've talked so much about getting the why that I think sometimes people get so caught up on getting the why that they forget about the process to get there. They just, got to get a why. I got to get a why. People are fun to talk to. And I will say, this is an interesting thing. We meet you guys in person at EMX events. And I've talked to some of you guys, and I've had amazing conversations. You're fun to talk to. You're entertaining. You're incredible people. But then that's not who you are in day one. Like, you change into this kind of interrogator. And man, a lot of this is be yourself. Be pleasant. Take it seriously. But just be conversational. Be present. Some Jim Parker, present time consciousness,
So think about this. I came up with this analogy a couple weeks ago on a group call. I think it just came out. It made sense to me, and it made sense to a lot of other people. Think about, you're sitting in there with this person that you don't know, you've never met before, and they're on the other side facing you, and there's a plate of glass between you. And when they come in, that glass is filthy. It's gunked up, it's muddy, it's grimy, it's filthy. You can tell there's a person sitting over there. You have no idea who they are or what they look like. Every question you ask, you're wiping away a little bit of that gunk and grime. So your goal by the end of day one, or the end of this conversation, and this conversation could extend through the exam, and sometimes there's an appropriate time and place or person where you may need to table the conversation, do the exam first, let them bathe in the exam and the fact that, and let them soak up the fact in their brain that it's actually, hey, this is worse than I thought. Now those questions will hit harder on the back end. But if you don't know the questions to ask, you can't talk and do an exam at the same time. So wiping away at the end of this conversation, you should be able to see clearly who this person is, what their identity is, what they resonate with, what they care about, and what their fear to lose or what they hope to regain or maintain.
Just a kind of a real example of that.
Go ahead, Wade.
Oh, so a real world example of that. I had a lady, I think it was last week, and she threw out the generic, she was afraid of amputation. And I asked, I said, why do you say that? And she said, well, my mother and my aunt and my grandmother all lost a limb. And I was like, oh my gosh. So this is like extremely real for you. She said, yes, very much so. I said, so after that amputation, what did you observe in terms of like their quality of life, their ability to do things? She said they couldn't do much. Most of them didn't make it much longer after that. But I cared for my mother for like 9 or 10 years after that. I said, so if you don't mind my asking, like if something like that were to, God forbid, happen to you, who is able to step in to care for you? And she said, I don't have a husband or any children. So there's nothing. I said, so maintaining your independence, your ability to care for yourself, it sounds to me like that's your highest priority. She said, absolutely. Without that, I have nothing. And I don't need to go much further than that.
That's a why.
That's a why.
Yeah.
Like this lady, she is terrified that she can't take care of herself.
Yeah. And that's where you want to get with people. You really want to just, and sometimes the easiest way is the most direct approach. Like sometimes if you feel like I'm not getting their specific thing, then ask them specifically. I had a patient once, and some of you guys have probably heard me say this on onboarding. And it was a decompression patient. And he said, no, it wasn't. It was a neuropathy, because he said, well, I just want to go fishing again. I said, okay, well, how important is that to you? Man, I love fishing. I used to fish all the time. So I'm like, okay, this guy's passionate about fishing. And I said, well, what kind of fishing do you do? We got a lot of, I didn't say, wow, how would that feel to go fishing again? Because I hadn't earned the right yet. So I said, well, let me ask you this. There's a lot of great fishing here in Kansas. What kind of fishing do you like to do? And he said, oh, we got a boat at Lake of the Ozarks. Man, I just love getting out there early morning, watching the sunrise, sitting there fishing, right? And I said, well, why can't you do that? And he goes, oh, man, my feet just hurt too bad. Well, I'm still not there. I could tell. You got to read body language. He wasn't really opening up. And he had a Budweiser shirt on. So I felt like talking about beer would not be offensive, because when you're so excited about beer that you wear a shirt. So he had his Bud shirt on. And I said, well, you say that you don't do that because your feet hurt. But man, between you and me, there's enough Budweiser to take care of that problem. And that's what you do when you're fishing anyway. So I feel like if that was the only reason, you could just drink a 6-pack and go fishing. We were kind of laughing. And he goes, yeah, I said, so here's the question. Specifically, what is it about fishing that keeps you from going? He goes, oh, my balance is really bad, and my wife's afraid that I'll fall off the dock and drown. And so she's just not comfortable with me fishing. And I said, is there anything else that she's concerned about? And he goes, yeah, she doesn't want me to drive either. This was not a fishing problem. If I would have said, how does it feel not to go fishing? I wouldn't have got there. So then when I said, well, he was kind of annoyed by this, right, about his wife. And I said, here's the thing, man, my first wife would have tied an anchor around my neck and thrown me right off the dock. So the fact that she doesn't want you to die, I'm taking that as a win. So you seem annoyed by it, but dude, you guys have been married, 40 years? He goes, almost 50. I said, she still wants you around. So first of all, let's take the win on that one. He goes, well, I guess that's true. But then I was able to say, what would it feel like if you could drive safely, fish safely, and not have your wife worrying? That's the $10,000 question now. And I got there by saying, well, specifically, what can't you do? So if you guys tune out the rest of the day, you guys should get the replay of this and listen to it 20 times if you're having trouble on day one. Because all these nuggets these guys threw out, man, this is it. You do this. And like Bill said, it's a formality when they come in the next day. So getting the why doesn't have to be awkward. It doesn't have to be painful. It actually can be fun if you just come from a point of love. If you're calculating your profit, no one will give you a why. First of all, I will make that comment. People can feel and sense your motivation. So if you're struggling, if your office is hurting, if you're freaked out about making rent, you got to figure out a way to put that on the back burner and focus 100% on changing that person's life, because that's half of the tone is what you're thinking in the background. So, all right.
As we, taking all of that and transitioning that to day two, we've gathered all this, right? What happens to emotion over time, right? The more time, the lower the emotion. We have to raise the emotional quotient back up again. That doesn't happen with statements. So from a general framework, and then we can discuss this, day two has to be interactive. We want to answer the 4 questions everybody wants to know, but if we just tell them all the things, it doesn't resonate. They have to tell us, right? They have to walk themselves into care by answering our questions. You don't have to ask as many questions, but in the beginning, we want to bring that back up, right? Why, hit them with the results first. But then, I know I can help your case. I know I can help your condition, right? The bad news is this, but the good news is I know the problem. I know I can help. That's really all you have to say, because that's what they're buying. They're buying you. They're buying your hope and your certainty and authority. So if you need to practice that in the mirror until you give yourself goosebumps. Bad news is this, but don't worry. I know the problem. I know I can help. I put a very well-constructed, specific plan for you together that I'm going to review with you, but I'm going to be asking you some questions along the way to make sure that I can accept you, the person, because Linda, all I care about is results. Do you agree that's the same for you? So what happens if you start this plan and you don't follow it? Well, I don't get results. Right. And would that be helpful to you at all from a physical or financial standpoint? No. So tell me, so I'm going to be asking you some questions just to make sure that you are going to get the results and that you can follow the plan. So my first question, I guess, Linda, would be, why is this problem even important enough for you to get it fixed at this point? So instead of telling them, so Linda, remember yesterday when you came in, we went through this and we did this, and you said that you couldn't do this and your balance was this and you were hopeful to get this back and you wanted to be able to do this, and if we could help you with that, it'd mean everything to you. Is that right? Yeah. I mean, that doesn't do anything. Make them talk again. So that's a different question that you don't ask on day one. You're gathering information, you're gathering your bullets, your ammunition on day one to fire back at them on day two, to attach to everything that you're doing, that you're going over those 4 sections, with the end result is they're walking themselves into care, and it's their idea and they're just leaping at it, right? So ask that question, then ask a question, make a statement, ask a question, make a statement, ask a question. So that's what these day 2 calls are for, where we can break this down. We don't have a lot of time to do that here. We got 20 minutes left. But each section of your ROF, you should be telling, but then asking, right? Would you like to, and so then Linda tells you why it's important. Well, like I told you yesterday, Doc, I don't care if that's the answer. She's still telling me. So Gary, what is it about what Linda's going through that worries or concerns you the most? Now he's telling me, her, himself, right? And then maybe there's a few follow-up questions for that. So yeah, I put together a really well-constructed plan specifically for you to get you the best and fastest results. Would you like to hear it? ask permission. It's then that's a strategic yes or no question. Yes or no questions usually suck, not all of them. That one's a good one. Like, would you like to hear it? Would you like for me to review that with you? Yes. They're telling themselves, I want to hear the plan, right? Then when you go through the plan, check in with them, and it doesn't have to be a lot of detail. If you do 4 hours worth of testing, how can you tell them what's wrong in 2 minutes or 2 sentences? And then when you go over we don't have to talk about this gut health plan, 90 days, 3 phases, all this stuff. They don't care. I promise you, Sanella, 7 minutes, $10,000. They don't care what the plan is. Like, they only care what's wrong. Can I help you? What do I have to do? How much does it cost? So Sanella used to do that. 3 phases. In this phase, you're going to do this. In this phase, you're going to do this. In this phase, you're going to do this. You're going to take this and this and this. And man, they check out and they're like, no, I don't. And then you got to do this diet. And like, forget that. That comes once they've bought you. That comes when it's time to unpack the kit and get them started. She literally said, you're going to have 2 things that you're going to use for the next 90 days, a liquid and a powder. It's going to take you 2 minutes twice a day in the kitchen. How well do you feel you can spend 2 minutes twice a day in the kitchen getting better? It's going to do this, this, and this. Remember when you said yesterday? Well, that's why this is in there. It's going to reduce inflammation, speed the healing, and put your body in the optimal environment to heal and repair. That's it. Can you spend two? Is it worth spending two? Make it sound easy. You're going to have these 2 devices. You're going to use them for 30 minutes twice a day. Any reason you can't watch TV twice a day and get better? Make it sound easy to them. Simplify it. Do not overcomplicate it. Confused mind can't buy, won't buy. If it sounds too complicated, they check out and they won't do it. So, but you got to ask questions. Keep them engaged. If you're showing x-rays, tell them what's normal, but then ask them, what does this look like to you? Like, here's your left hip, here's your right hip. What do you see that's different here? Well, especially if you have lines on the x-ray. Well, it looks like the left is lower or the right is higher. Yeah, what do you think that's doing to that joint? I don't know, but it's probably not good. Do you think the other side is affected by that? Yeah. What do you think's happening above that? What do you think's happening below that? How do you think that's affecting your hips, your knees, your ankles, feet, and toes? Like, make them talk to you, make them give you answers. Because I promise you, if you do that throughout the whole thing, the money is. So at the end of I know I'm like, watch this recording many times. The care plan, at the end of going over the care plan and getting those commitments. So, Linda, do you see how a well-constructed care plan, how this well-constructed care plan specifically for you is going to help you accomplish this, this, and this? Yes, that's another strategic yes or no question, right? Yeah, I can see it. So on a 0 to 10 scale, how well do you feel you could follow that? Oh yeah, that's easy. I can do that. All right, would you like to see what the insurance details are? Or would you like to see what the funds needed for treatment would be? Yeah, let's do that. And then go over that.
Awesome. All right. You guys are going to want to watch this several times to get all that down. Bill just gave you a 1-hour lecture in 10 minutes. So definitely review this. Okay, first of all, I'm drinking kombucha, Rob Rice. He just asked me if I just cracked a beer open. So no, it's kombucha, just so we all know. Bill's got a beer there. Oh no, his is easy. Yeah, never mind. All right. Couple other questions here. Actually, these are a little, I want to have the three of us spend a couple of minutes on the spouse because that's so critical. And then I have a couple questions that I want to hit, so we won't spend a lot of time. I think psychologically, sometimes we don't understand what's going on with the dynamic between husband and wives in buying. I think we've all been told, or with other coaching groups have kind of put the emphasis on, well, you got to have the spouse there because they won't spend $10,000 without permission. And there's a little truth to that, but here's what's actually happening, in my opinion. For example, if Kelly was told, you need to spend $10,000 on your feet. We have the money. I trust her. She doesn't need my permission to spend it. However, as the woman of the house and as a mother of 5, her brain is going, I should spend that money on braces. That money should go to the kids. That money should do something for our family. So I'm not going to spend this money because I'm going to sacrifice for my family. And she needs me to say, you know what? That's a bunch of crap. You're important. We love you. We'll figure everything else out. We need to get you healthy. Same with me. I'm not going to just go spend 10 grand because my mind's going to be okay. Cohen needs his truck fixed. We got another one coming up. We probably need another car here. I'm looking at 3 college tuitions. Speaking of the kids. And so my mind is calculating how much money I should give to my children, and I'm going to sacrifice my health to do that. And so what's happening dynamically here with husband and wives is they're going to sacrifice for the family, and they don't need permission to spend money. They need permission to take care of themselves over the family. So I'm going to say that again. That's a huge distinction. They don't need permission from the spouse to spend money. They actually need permission to be selfish and make themselves a priority. Did everybody get that? Did that make sense? Because I think sometimes we're too much not understanding the dynamic of what's really happening. And man, the spouse is they're going to either make the sale or break it. They're never neutral. One quick thing: if the spouse is sitting here like this and you don't address it, you're wasting the next 20 minutes of your life. If they're resistant, you have to address that. And I'm going to have let's spend 2 minutes on that. How do you address that, guys? When you see that resistant spouse, I know you guys are rock stars and you're not going to wait till the end and pray to God that they turn around because you're so dynamic as a person. So how do you address this? You got the patients on board, the spouse is clearly not loving it.
I'll just kind of address their body language. Let's say I'm talking to like a dick. Like Blaine, I can't help but notice by your body language that it seems like there's some resistance to what I'm talking about. Let's kind of address those. What are your concerns right now?
So you just come right out and ask them.
Yeah, I mean, there's no point. If you try to land the plane and his arms are still folded, you're gonna crash. Like there's no way. And I was like, I just don't think, I'm just really concerned about the money, and we've got this and we've got that. And it's like, I understand. Well, we haven't even gotten there yet. It's probably not as bad as you think. It probably is, but I'll tell them it's probably not as bad as you think. But in terms of any questions on what we've addressed so far, is your resistance about the care, or is it about the potential cost? Well, it's about the potential cost. Well, it's like, well, we might as well get into that. And oh, that's what I thought. It's too much money. It's like I see. Is there a value that you would place on Kelly's feet that's not to be exceeded? I'm just gonna
Not
make him.
really.
I'm gonna make him give me a number, right? Because if he's gonna be an asshole, he's gonna tell me how much his wife's feet are worth.
Yep.
And then they're like, oh, yeah, yeah. I'm like, I'm here for you, and I'll do everything that I can. If there's a monetary value that I'm not to exceed, and to get your wife better, I need to know what that is. And I've never lost after that. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, so we can move on from that, man, because that's exactly how to do it. Just
Well,
call
and
them
that
out.
that that just goes back to getting them engaged from the very beginning,
Mhm.
keeping them engaged through the whole thing. Don't ask them, what is it about? Make Linda talk first, then make Gary talk. If Gary's resistant, like he shouldn't be resistant if you're asking what is it about? Now, if he says, "Oh, I'm not really concerned," well, why? Right? Don't take what they say as face value. Remember, who, what, where, when, why, if is 0 to 10. So um, help me understand that. Why aren't you concerned about that? Right? And that because we need to uncover any potential objections down the road, but keep them engaged. When you ask Linda if there's any issues with this, Gary, do you see any issues with Linda doing this from your perspective? From your perspective, Gary, how do you see this? From your perspective, are you, if you needed to support her, is that something that you feel you could do? Like if you're attaching it to a therapy or something, just keeping them engaged. If you're showing x-rays, ask the spouse what they see, or what are you afraid that this could turn into, Gary?
Mhm.
We aim it at the prospective patient, but we don't aim enough stuff at the spouse, right?
Absolutely. And get a why on the spouse. I always, would ask, I would always tell this little story to kind of set up the scenario. I say, hey, I actually had a couple in here a couple weeks ago, and they had a lake, a boat, a house. Man, maybe that is beer I'm drinking. They actually had a lake house at Lake of the Ozarks, and they were telling me how their plan for retirement. They had a boat for fishing. They had jet skis for the grandkids. They thought the grandkids would be there every weekend of the summer, and that's how they'd spend their retirement. And as they're talking about how the guy can't walk down the steps to get to the boat, his wife blurted out, "I feel like you robbed my retirement." And it was awkward. I literally kind of slid my chair back. I'm like, "Ooh." And I said, "Well, you guys want to talk about that for a second?" I said, "Why do you say that?" And she's like, "Well, I'm healthy. I can go there, but I'm not going alone. So I've never been there with the grandkids, and I'm healthy. So I feel like his neuropathy is stealing my retirement." So I tell that story. Then I look at the spouse. I say, "So I'm curious, Carol, is there any way that Bob's neuropathy has affected your life?" And I'm going to get a why from him. I heard Kelly do this. And I actually walked by as she backhanded a patient on the arm, like she just smacked him. I'm like, what's happening here? And so I kind of listened in. And basically during the exam, she'd found out, or during the day one, they had the money in the bank to go to Europe. They had the money saved. They had this 1 month European dream vacation. They spent their entire work life saving for, and they can't go because he won't walk on cobblestones or walk through airports. And so they got down to it, and the guy's like, "Oh man, no, I am not spending $10,000 on neuropathy, no." And Kelly kind of tried to answer. She's like, "No, that's just too much. We're just not spending that." And so she literally hit him on the arm, and she's like, "Well, don't do it for you, man. Your wife wants to go to Europe." And he's like, "What?" He goes, "She spent 10 minutes telling me about this dream vacation. So while it's not worth it to you to spend this on your feet, she wants to go to Europe. You need to do this." And the wife's like, "Yeah." And the husband's like, "Really?" She's like, "Yeah, this is ridiculous. We're going to Europe. Get out your wallet." And he literally laughed. He goes, "Well, I guess we're going to Europe." He didn't sign up for his feet. He signed up because his wife wanted to go to Europe. Had Kelly not done her due diligence to learn that, they would not have signed up for care. So the end result, while they got to go to Europe, he got his quality of life back, but only because she knew the wife wanted to go to Europe. So, man, get those spouses engaged. You can't ignore them. Make them part of the process. They'll close the deal for you. They're your best advocates, but you got to get them on your side. So we won't beat that into the ground anymore, but man, get the spouse on board.
Well, it's not that different than what you were talking about earlier with, they've got to put their, that they have other priorities besides their health. They're paying towards something else. So there was I actually did a coaching call. This actually wasn't my case, but they asked me how I would have handled it. And they had a grandmother in there who said no to care. And her justification is that she's paying for her granddaughter's college. I was like, wow, that's amazing. That you do that. I'm still a self-proclaimed grandma's boy. She's 92, but I spent every summer of my life with my grandmother. So your granddaughter's super lucky to have you. But at the same time, I feel for her in this situation. She's like, "Oh, what do you mean?" I said, "I could not live with myself watching my grandmother's health decline, knowing that she had prioritized my situation over hers. That's not something that I could personally live with." So, I mean, I know you're blessing her, but that I struggle with that. That makes me sad. And that's after that they're like, "Oh my God, why didn't we call you before that?" But I'm like, you didn't know. But put yourself on the other side of that. Would you want to watch your grandmother's health go downhill, knowing that she prioritized you over her, and remind them of that? Like, you still might not win, but I bet you their brain ticks about it for a minute anyway.
Yep, that's powerful. And you can do that even if they're little. I've said before, Carol, as much as it hurts for you not to get down on the floor and play with your 3-year-old grandson, do you think he understands why grandma doesn't want to play with him? Mm-hmm. So as much as this is painful for you, I feel like they're suffering also. So yeah, that's gold. So we have about 3 minutes left. I want each of us to give one of our ninja moves. Somebody literally, that was a question, was tell me a ninja move. So here's mine. Here's how you deal with a minimizer, or someone that's only got like 10% nerve loss, or you're afraid they're going to be like, well, I'm 90. Of course, my nerves don't work. So here's the analogy I love. I'll say, the human body's a lot like a car where we expect moving parts to wear out. So we expect tires, brakes, shocks, or knees, shoulders, our low back. Anything that moves is going to wear out, and we expect that. When's the last time you ever heard of anybody replacing the wiring in their car? They'll say never. I'm like, no, most cars end up in the junkyard with all their original wiring fully intact. You should be in your 90s with your nervous system 100% intact. So even if you're in your 90s and I see 10% nerve loss, that's a huge concern to me. It's not a moving part. It should not wear out. It should remain intact until you're in your 90s. So now I've told them 10% sucks, and this is not age related. So, okay, Wade, what's your ninja move?
You got the stoic guy who doesn't want to tell you anything. His answers are 3 words or less. He's got his arms folded. It's always a male. His arms are folded in front of you. He's giving you as little information as possible. I'll usually ask. I'll just kind of put my clipboard down, my paper down, my pen down, and I'll just look at him. Blaine, I ask you a question, just man to man. Did you make this appointment or did your wife? And they did react exactly like that. They kind of smile. They're like, yeah, my wife did it. I'm like, that's interesting. So where's she today? Oh, she was shopping. She's got this going on. She's got that going on. I'm like, okay. So let me ask you this. What are you doing that's driving her so damn crazy that she called and set us up like this? Well, I guess I've been kind of a jerk and I've been short and I'm this, that, and the other. She wants to go do stuff. I don't want to do anything. It usually opens them up pretty good, but I'm just like, man to man. I'm trying to help you. You're right now. You're in my office. You're on my time. I want to be able to use this productively. You know, what's going on? And usually you can get through.
Awesome. Bill, what do you got?
Real quick, mine would go a different direction. It would into because I gave you a lot today. Would be on the exam. On the exam, preface make help them understand the rationale for the test that you're doing if it's neuropathy. Don't rush through the exam. If you blow through it and they leave day one confused, why the hell did you use a hair dryer on my feet? Like they either won't come back or it's gonna jeopardize day two. So I like to ask them, hey Gary, have you ever had an EMG or one of those tests at the orthopedist or the doctor where they stuck needles in your arms or legs and they shocked you? It doesn't feel real good. They've either had it or they haven't. Well, don't worry, we're not going to do that today. But I want you to understand what we are going to be doing, because they need to know the difference, right? Because maybe they were told they don't have neuropathy because of that test. Maybe they were told they do have it. Um, so that test, great test for what it's great for. It's a fancy computer test that measures the electrical signals and how fast they travel from point A to point B, usually to see if there's a pinched nerve, if they're trying to diagnose carpal tunnel, or if they're checking to see if you need surgery for like back surgery or neck surgery or something like that. Here's the thing. The nerve in your arms and legs, you have two kinds of nerves. Nerves that control your muscles so you can move, nerves that control sensation and feeling. Those nerves control your balance. Those nerves also are not tested during that EMG and CV test to the degree that they should be. There's no fancy computer test that I can hook you up, put needles in your arms and legs, zap a cold signal through your nerves, and have the computer tell me how well you felt cold, right? Doesn't exist. Never has, never will. So we have to use good old-fashioned utensils. This is cold. It was just in the fridge that I just got out before you came in, or whatever that looks like. So we're going to be using these to test these nerves. But the cool thing is your brain will know, because remember that thermal camera that showed that your face was normal? Well, we're going to use that to test this. And then we're going to compare it to potentially abnormal areas. And your brain will know if it's the same or not. So usually the first number that pops in your head they found is the most accurate, plus or minus 3%. So that means if we do these tests and it shows that you have 57% nerve damage, you either have as high as 60% or as low as 54%. So, so if you preface it that way, then there's a rationale for those tests that it makes logical sense to them. So when you're done with that, I had a guy leave a scathing review before I started doing this because he's been to several neurologists before. I know I could help him, but he said, "This guy tells me I have neuropathy and he blew a hairdryer on my foot." You have to connect it for them and compare it to something that they may have or could potentially have in the future.